They laughed when the broken widow couldn't afford her own home. The auction hammer fell, and cruel neighbors celebrated her defeat. But when the billionaire buyer stepped forward with the deed, revealing whose name was really on it, their laughter died. Sometimes karma wears a three-piece suit and costs billions. If you believe good people deserve justice, smash that like button and subscribe for more incredible true stories that'll restore your faith in humanity. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and 6 months ago, I thought I knew what rock bottom felt like. I was wrong. Rock bottom has layers, and some people in this world will gleefully hand you a shovel to dig deeper. It started with a phone call that shattered my world. Tom, my husband of 23 years, had been driving home from his night shift when a drunk driver ran a red light. The impact killed him instantly. At least he didn't suffer, everyone kept telling me, as if those words could fill the gaping hole in my chest where my heart used to be. Tom and I had built our life together in the small town of Millbrook. We'd bought our little blue house on Maple Street when we were newlyweds, barely scraping together the down payment. Over the years, we'd painted every room, planted the garden, and created memories in every corner. It wasn't much to look at, but it was ours. Or, at least, I thought it was. The funeral was beautiful. The whole town came out to pay their respects. Margaret Wells, our neighbor from across the street, even brought a casserole and told me how sorry she was for my loss. She seemed so genuine, so caring. I should have known better. In small towns, sympathy has an expiration date, and Margaret was already checking the calendar. The first medical bill arrived 2 weeks after the funeral, then another, then a flood of them. The ambulance ride, the emergency room treatment, the desperate attempts to save Tom's life. Even though he didn't make it, the hospital still wanted their money. $47,000 for a man who was already gone. The insurance company initially said they'd cover it, but then came the denial letter, some technicality about pre-existing conditions that Tom never even had. Without Tom's income and drowning in medical debt, I couldn't keep up with the mortgage payments. I'd been a nurse for 15 years, but grief had paralyzed me. I could barely get out of bed, let alone work 12-hour shifts. I tried to return to work, but panic attacks made it impossible. The hospital put me on indefinite leave. I started selling everything I could. Tom's tools, my jewelry, furniture we'd collected over the years. I held garage sales every weekend, watching strangers rifle through our belongings like vultures. Margaret would walk by during these sales, shaking her head with that practiced look of pity. "Such a shame," she'd say to her friend Linda, loud enough for me to hear. "Tom always was better with his hands than with money." Sarah should have been more prepared for something like this. They'd say it standing in my own driveway while I was trying to sell my wedding china for grocery money. The whispers started getting louder around town. At the grocery store, at church, at the post office. Poor Sarah Mitchell never learned to manage money, living beyond their means all those years. Should have had better insurance, should have saved more. The town that had embraced me for 20 years was now dissecting my life like amateur surgeons. Robert Kane started showing up at my house around this time. He was a local real estate developer, the kind of man who measured success by the zeros in his bank account and the pain he could inflict on others. He'd knock on my door with that sleazy grin and talk about how he could help me out by buying my house for cash. His offers were insultingly low. "This is a buyer's market, sweetheart," he'd say, looking around my living room like he was appraising livestock. "And honestly, this place needs work. I'd be doing you a favor." When I refused, his visits became more aggressive. He'd show up with contractors, pointing out every flaw in my home, wanting me to feel like my sanctuary was worthless. The foreclosure notice came on Tom's birthday. 30 days to pay the full balance or lose the house. $147,000. I might as well have been asked to fly to the moon. I tried everything. I called every family member I had. But Tom and I had always been the ones others came to for help. My sister Janet wanted to help, but her husband had just lost his job, and they had 3 kids. I went to the bank, Literally got on my knees in the manager's office and begged for more time. The manager was Margaret's brother-in-law, and he looked at me with cold indifference. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said, not even looking up, "business is business. We've already extended you more courtesy than most banks would." Courtesy, that's what he called letting me suffer for months before pulling the trigger. I hired a lawyer with what little money I had left. He was brutally honest. Without $50,000 up front, I had no case. The house was going to auction, and nothing could stop it. He gave me one piece of advice that stuck. Sometimes the worst things reveal who people really are. Remember that. The church tried to help. Pastor Williams organized a collection, and the congregation raised $3,000. It was incredibly generous, but like trying to stop a forest fire with a water gun. 3,000 against 147,000. As the auction date approached, the town's excitement was palpable. Property auctions were entertainment in Millbrook, especially someone's downfall. Margaret was practically gleeful, talking about how she might bid on my house herself to keep property values up. Robert Kane was circling like a shark, telling anyone who'd listen how he'd get my house for a fraction of its worth. The night before the auction, I sat in my empty living room surrounded by boxes. I'd sold almost everything, keeping only Tom's favorite coffee mug, our wedding album, and a blanket his mother had knitted. These fragments were all I'd have left. I'd scraped together $12,000 from selling my car and engagement ring. $12,000 against a house worth at least $400,000. It was pathetic, but it was everything I had. I knew it wouldn't be enough, but I had to try. Auction day dawned gray and cold. The courthouse steps were packed with spectators treating my downfall as entertainment. Margaret stood near the front, wearing her best dress and a cruel smile. Robert was there with his crew of contractors, all looking like they were at a party. The auctioneer described my property as a charming fixer-upper in a prime location. Fixer-upper, my home of 20 years, where we'd hosted Christmas dinners and created memories, reduced to a fixer-upper. When bidding started, my heart pounded so hard I thought everyone could hear it. The opening bid was $150,000, and I knew I was outclassed. Robert jumped in early, followed by Margaret, who was bidding just to drive up the price, knowing I couldn't compete. Every bid felt like another piece of my dignity crumbling. Margaret turned and looked directly at me, eyes sparkling with malicious joy. "Don't worry, Sarah," she called out loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'll take good care of your house. Maybe turn Tom's workshop into a wine cellar." The crowd actually laughed. They laughed at my pain, at my loss, at the destruction of everything I'd worked for. When bidding reached 180 and seemed to stall, Robert stepped forward confidently. The auctioneer raised his hammer, going once at 180. That's when I heard the voice that changed everything. Deep, calm, unfamiliar. 500,000. Silence. Every head turned toward a well-dressed strangers at the back. Robert's face went red. 520, he shouted, panic in his voice. Margaret looked confused and angry. The stranger didn't blink. 750,000. The crowd gasped. My house was worth maybe 400,000, and this man was bidding almost double. Robert tried desperately. 800. But you could see his fear. 1.2 million, the stranger said calmly. Deafening silence. Robert's mouth hung open. Margaret went pale. The auctioneer called out, "Sold to the gentleman in the back for 1.2 million. My legs gave out. Someone caught me before I hit the ground. My house was gone to a complete stranger for an impossible amount. The crowd dispersed, buzzing with confusion. Margaret and Robert slipped away. Their victory turned bitter. I was still sitting on the courthouse steps when the stranger approached. He was younger than expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes and an expensive watch. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm Marcus Chen. We need to talk. Do I know you?" He smiled. "You saved my life 10 years ago. I've been waiting to return the favor." My mind raced. 10 years ago, emergency room at County General. You probably don't remember. Busy night, another heart attack patient. But you stayed when other nurses gave up, worked a double shift, donated blood when we couldn't find my type, held my hand when I was scared and alone. It flooded back. The businessman clutching his chest. No family, just a ringing phone. Doctors said slim chances, but his fight reminded me of Tom's determination. You told me everyone deserves someone to fight for them, Marcus continued. I tried to find you afterward, but you'd transferred departments. I've had investigators looking ever since. I was just doing my job. No. 3 nurses told me there was nothing more to do. You stayed anyway. You fought for a stranger because it was right. That goodness is rare. He pulled out an envelope. After recovery, I started a tech company. It did very well. I know about Tom's accident, the bills, everything. I've been quietly taking care of things for months. Taking care of things. Medical bills were paid 3 months ago. Insurance suddenly approved the claim. Funny how that happens with the right lawyers. But I waited, needed to see how people treated you in your darkest hour. The house is yours. Deeds in your name. Free and clear. Plus a $500,000 maintenance fund. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. There it was. My house deed, with my name as sole owner. No mortgage, no debt. But there's more, Marcus said, his voice hardening. I bid so much to send a message. I've watched how this town treated you. He raised his voice for lingering spectators. Sarah Mitchell is under my protection now. Anyone who's been cruel should know I have resources you can't imagine and a very long memory. He made phone calls. Go ahead with the Margaret Wells investigation. Everything about her finances. And Robert Kane? Buy his debt. All of it. Start the foundation. The Sarah Mitchell Foundation for Widows in Crisis. $50 million to start. Margaret's face went white. Robert had vanished. The remaining crowd was silent. The woman they'd mocked was now connected to a billionaire, making their lives complicated. This is too much, I whispered. You saved my life, but more than that, you changed it. I was ruthless before that night. Your kindness showed me what real compassion looks like. Everything good I've done since started with you. Then came the twist that changed everything. Marcus pulled out a worn hospital bracelet. That night, when you donated blood, the lab made an error. You thought you were type O positive, but you're AB negative, one of the rarest types. Your blood shouldn't have been compatible with mine. He paused. But it was. Because Sarah, we're brother and sister. The world spun. That's impossible. You were adopted at 2. Our birth parents died in a car accident when you were a toddler. I was 12. Different foster homes, different states, different names. I never stopped looking for my little sister. All those years feeling alone, and my brother had been searching for me. I didn't just save your life that night, I whispered. You were saving mine too. Marcus nodded, tears in his eyes. Family finds a way, Sarah. Always. Walking to my house, free and clear. Marcus explained he'd been protecting me from the shadows. The insurance approval, delayed foreclosure, even the pastor's successful fund drive had all been quietly assisted. Robert Kane's for sale signs appeared within a week. Margaret learned that cruelty has consequences when the right person is watching. The Sarah Mitchell Foundation became real, helping hundreds of widows abandoned by their communities. 3 months later, I returned to nursing. Not from need, but calling. The hospital welcomed me back, especially after a generous donation to their new cardiac wing. I still live in my little blue house, but it feels different. Not just because it's paid for, but because it's no longer a refuge. It's a launching pad for all the good we can do together. Marcus visits often. We're making up for 40 years of missed family dinners. He's taught me that wealth isn't about what you buy. It's about what you build, who you protect, and who you lift up when they're falling. Sometimes I think about that emergency room night, how basic human decency changed both our lives. I held a stranger's hand because everyone deserves someone to fight for them, and got back the brother I never knew I'd lost. That's karma. Not always immediate, not always obvious. Sometimes it takes 10 years and a billionaire brother to come full circle. But when it does, the justice is so perfect, it takes your breath away. The people of Millbrook treat me differently now, some with genuine respect, others with fake kindness that comes from knowing you can't be pushed around anymore. But I've learned to tell the difference, and Marcus has taught me it's okay to have boundaries, to remember who stood with you and who stood against you. Because somewhere out there, someone is having the worst day of their life, surrounded by people who should care but don't. And somewhere else, their rescue is already in motion, set in place by a kindness they've forgotten, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal that love wins, family endures, and karma never forgets. Hit that subscribe button if you believe in the power of kindness, and share this story with someone who needs to remember that their lowest moment might be setting up their greatest comeback. What act of kindness have you done that might still be working its way back to you? Let me know in the comments below.